You are not going to believe the truth I'm about to tell you, because the world knows Fantasia Barrino as the powerhouse voice who stunned America at just 19, but almost nobody knows what happened behind the camera, the secrets she was forced to carry, and how the same industry that lifted her up tried to tear her down piece by piece. What you're about to hear is not just a celebrity story. This is the kind of truth that exposes how brutal fame can really be, and how close one of America's sweetest stars came to losing everything, including her own life. When Fantasia first stepped onto the American Idol stage in 2004, she didn't just sing, she took over the room. Her voice wasn't polished like everyone else's. It was raw. It was emotional. It came from pain, from struggle, from real life. And America felt that. She was only 19, a young single mother with no real training, no big connections, and no fancy background. But every time she opened her mouth, it was like the world stopped and listened. Viewers called her America's sweetheart. But she was also something more. She was proof that sometimes greatness comes from the most unexpected places. When she won American Idol, everything in her life changed overnight. Cameras followed her, reporters chased her, and millions of people expected her to be happy, perfect, and grateful every single second. But the truth is, Fantasia had no idea how the music business actually worked. She didn't understand contracts. She didn't understand management deals. She didn't understand the dark side of fame, the side that slowly drains your peace, your money, and your identity. She trusted the wrong people, signed things she didn't fully read, and stepped into an industry that doesn't wait for anyone to catch up. While fans assumed she was living a dream, behind closed doors, she was drowning. Bills piled up. Taxes were mishandled. Management fees ate up her income. People she trusted took advantage of her. And instead of getting protected, she kept getting pushed into more work, more tours, more appearances, more commitments, all while barely understanding where her money was going or why she was constantly struggling financially despite being a national star. This is the part of fame the public never sees. When the camera is shut off, when the lights stop glowing, the contracts don't care if you're tired. The industry doesn't care if you're confused, overwhelmed, or mentally exhausted. Fantasia quickly learned that the music world has a way of giving with one hand and taking with the other by the time she was 26. The pressure had built up so much that she was barely holding herself together. The world kept saying she was strong, she was gifted, she was loved. But inside, she felt empty, and that emptiness kept growing. Her problems weren't just financial, they were emotional. She felt betrayed, manipulated, and trapped. She had a daughter depending on her, fans watching her, and a whole career she was trying to protect. But she couldn't find peace anywhere. Every time she tried to rise, something pushed her back down. And then came the darkest moment of her life. The moment she would later admit wasn't an accident. In 2010, Fantasia took a dangerous amount of aspirin and sleep medication. When she woke up in the hospital, people around her tried to spin it as an accident, as a misunderstanding. But she told the truth later. She didn't want to be here anymore. She said the pain was too loud, too heavy, too constant. She felt like she had nothing left to give and nowhere left to go. Imagine that, a young woman who millions loved, a voice that electrified audiences, a talent that shook an entire nation, yet she felt alone. That's what fame can do. It can make you shine in public and collapse in private. It can make you look successful on the outside while your inner world falls apart. But life wasn't done with Fantasia yet, and this is where her story takes a turn most people don't talk about. When she was lying in the hospital, feeling more defeated than ever, a nurse came into her room. She didn't talk to her like a celebrity. She didn't look at her like a headline. She spoke to her like a human being. She told Fantasia she still had purpose, that her life meant something, that she wasn't meant to give up like this. That single moment, a stranger's kindness, became the spark that brought Fantasia back from the edge. From that day forward, she made a promise to herself. She wasn't going to die like that. She wasn't going to let the industry that broke her be the same industry that ended her. She wasn't going to let her pain bury her voice. She would rebuild. She would reclaim her life, and she would make sure her daughter saw a mother who fought her way back instead of disappearing into darkness. But coming back wasn't easy. The world didn't suddenly become kind. Her problems didn't magically disappear. The same people who once cheered for her were quick to judge her. Media headlines twisted her struggles. The entertainment business whispered that she was unstable, unreliable, too emotional, too much drama. They tried to close doors on her. They tried to decide the trajectory of her career. But this time, Fantasia wasn't 19 anymore. She was older, wiser, and aware that if she didn't take control of her life, the system would control it for her. She started cutting people out, managers, advisors, and voices that didn't have her best interest at heart. She began rebuilding her finances. She learned how contracts worked. She learned how to say no. She learned how to protect her peace, her time, her voice. And slowly, one step at a time, she started to rise again. Her comeback wasn't explosive. It wasn't flashy. It was steady, painful, disciplined, and emotional. But it was real. And for the first time since she won American Idol, she felt like she was finally in charge of her own story. After Fantasia's near-death moment, the world expected her to come back either shattered or silent. But instead, she came back different, quieter, more cautious, but stronger in ways even she didn't fully understand. Fame had once felt like a storm she couldn't control. Now she wanted to stand in the center of that storm and learn how to move through it on her own terms. And that shift didn't happen overnight. It was a slow battle, a private one, fought in moments the public never saw. The first thing Fantasia had to face was reality. The financial mess, the contracts that drained her instead of supporting her, and the people who were benefiting from her confusion. She realized that for years, she had been so busy trying to survive emotionally that she never had time to understand the business she was in. And the industry took full advantage of that. She made money, but she didn't keep most of it. She performed everywhere, but she barely rested. She trusted people who promised to guide her, but they guided themselves instead. So she started over. She sat down with lawyers, accountants, and experts who explained things to her in plain language. She read every contract, line by line. She asked questions, the kind she was once too intimidated to ask. She learned how the industry hides fees and percentages inside fancy language. She learned where she went wrong, and instead of feeling ashamed, she felt empowered. For the first time, Fantasia wasn't just the artist. She was the decision-maker, and that changed everything. But money wasn't the only thing she needed to rebuild. Her spirit had been damaged. Her confidence cracked in ways nobody could see. Every time she stepped on stage, a part of her wondered if people were looking at her talent or her past mistakes. Every interview felt like a test. Every comment online felt like a judgment. She was carrying emotional scars that don't show up on skin, the kind that stay deep inside your mind and whisper doubts when you're alone. Still, she kept moving. She returned to music because music was the one thing that never betrayed her. Her voice had always been her shield and her truth, and she needed that truth more than ever. When she recorded again, she wasn't chasing hits. She wasn't trying to impress labels. She was singing for survival, for release, for healing. And something surprising happened. Her voice sounded even more powerful than before, not just technically, but emotionally. There was a new depth, a new pain, a new fire. You could hear her journey in every note as she made her way back into the spotlight. The industry didn't quite know what to do with her. On one side, she was still incredibly talented, undeniable. On the other side, she had become unpredictable in their eyes. Someone who had broken down publicly, someone who didn't fit their image of a perfectly packaged star. They wanted to control her narrative, to frame her as a troubled singer who needed guidance. But Fantasia wasn't going to let that happen. She didn't want pity. She didn't want to be seen as fragile. She wanted to be seen as real. So she stopped hiding her truth. Instead of pretending she was fine, she started speaking openly in interviews about her struggles, the depression, the pressure, the overdose, the mistakes, the lessons. And that honesty changed her relationship with the public. People who once judged her began to understand her. Fans who knew her only as a voice began to see her as a human being. Her pain connected her to people who had their own silent battles. And suddenly, her comeback wasn't just a music story. It was a survival story. But even with all this growth, there were challenges she couldn't escape. There were nights when she felt herself slipping back into old emotions. There were moments when she questioned if she was strong enough to continue in an industry that had almost destroyed her. There were times when she looked at her daughter and felt guilty for everything her little girl had witnessed. Healing is never a straight line, and Fantasia had to remind herself of that over and over again. Despite everything, she kept fighting. She rebuilt her team, choosing people who cared about her as a person, not just as a product. She set boundaries, Real ones, firm ones. She learned how to say no to interviews that felt invasive, shows that drained her energy, deals that didn't respect her worth. She focused on her mental health, on her peace, on her stability. For years, she had been living in chaos. Now she wanted calm, and slowly, the calm came. Not because life became perfect, but because she learned how to handle it differently. She learned how to take care of herself. She learned how to protect her heart. And in that protection, she found strength she didn't even know she had, as she stepped back into acting in larger roles. Something inside her clicked. She realized that she wasn't just surviving anymore, she was growing. She was evolving. She was discovering the version of herself she was always meant to be. Beyond fame, beyond pressure, beyond expectations. But the world wasn't done watching her. In fact, some of her biggest career moments were still ahead of her. And even she didn't know that life was preparing her for a chapter so powerful, so unexpected, that it would redefine her story all over again. A chapter where the same girl who once felt broken would take center stage once more, not as a victim, not as a tragedy, but as a woman reborn. Her journey was far from over. The world was about to witness a comeback that wasn't loud, but unforgettable. And Fantasia wasn't stepping back into the spotlight to prove anything to the industry. She was stepping back to honor the promise she made to herself. The promise that she would never let the darkness win again. This was the rise after the fall. The rebuilding after the destruction. And the world was about to see a Fantasia they had never seen before, confident, grounded, wiser, and more powerful than ever. As Fantasia continued rebuilding her life, something remarkable began happening inside her. A transformation that didn't come from fame, or applause or awards, but from the quiet understanding that she had survived what was meant to break her. For years, she had been defined by the world's expectations. Now she was learning how to define herself. And that shift brought a new chapter of strength, clarity, and purpose. But healing isn't simple. Even after taking control of her finances, surrounding herself with better people, and finding strength in her music again, Fantasia still had to face the emotional weight of everything she had been through. Trauma doesn't disappear just because the world moves on. There were nights when she still felt the echoes of old pain. Nights when memories of betrayal kept her awake. Nights when she questioned whether she was truly ready to trust again, to trust people, to trust the industry, and to trust herself. Her voice didn't just reach audiences. It reached her own heart first. It reminded her of why she fought so hard to stay alive. It reminded her that her gifts were bigger than her darkest moments. And slowly, with each performance, she began reclaiming pieces of herself she thought were lost forever. Her career started to move again. Not with the chaotic rush of fame she once experienced, but with steady, intentional steps. She wasn't interested in being everywhere. She was interested in being where she belonged. She wasn't chasing hits. She was creating music that reflected her truth. She wasn't trying to impress executives. She was trying to heal through expression, and audiences could feel the difference. Her authenticity was magnetic. Her honesty made people listen. Her journey made people respect her in ways they never had before. But with growth came new challenges. The entertainment world has a long memory for scandals, but a short one for healing. Some people still whispered about her past. Some still judged her for her struggles. Some still tried to keep her trapped in the image of the girl who had fallen apart at 26. And Fantasia had to learn how to walk into rooms where she knew she was being judged. Not with fear, but with dignity. She learned how to carry herself with quiet confidence. She learned how to speak up when something didn't feel right. She learned how to shut down gossip and assumptions with grace. She learned that the only validation she truly needed came from her own heart, her own peace, and her own truth. And that realization gave her a kind of power that no award or chart position could ever match. Around this time, her acting career began to take shape in ways she never expected. Opportunities appeared that allowed her to tell stories beyond music, stories about resilience, trauma, identity, and strength. These roles resonated with her deeply because they weren't just performances. They were extensions of her own life experience. She understood pain. She understood survival. She understood the journey from brokenness to healing. And that understanding made her acting feel real, raw, emotional, and unforgettable as she stepped into these roles. She discovered a new kind of confidence, the confidence of being seen not just as a singer, but as a complete artist. For years, people tried to fit her into one category. Now she was breaking out of every box she had ever been placed in. The world was beginning to see Fantasia not as the girl from American Idol, but as a woman with layers, depth, and incredible emotional strength. But while her public life was evolving, her private life was undergoing an even deeper transformation. She was learning how to love herself again, something she had never truly been taught. She was learning how to forgive herself for the moments she thought she had failed. She was learning how to let go of the guilt she carried from past mistakes. And she was learning how to build relationships based on respect, honesty, and peace. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't just surviving, she was living. She started spending more time with her daughter, focusing on giving her the stability and warmth she herself never had growing up. She wanted her child to see her not as a celebrity, not as someone constantly fighting battles, but as a mother who loved fiercely and grew courageously. And that bond became one of her greatest sources of strength. Even as things improved, shadows of the past continued to resurface. Trauma has a way of revisiting us when we least expect it. There were moments when Fantasia felt overwhelmed again, moments when anxiety crept in, moments when the pressure felt suffocating, moments when she wondered if she was strong enough to keep going. But unlike before, she now had tools. She had support. She had awareness. She had experience. She had faith. And most importantly, she had the unshakable belief that her life had purpose. Every time doubt tried to pull her backward, she reminded herself of the nurse who told her she wasn't meant to give up. She reminded herself of the promise she made while lying in that hospital bed. She reminded herself of the millions of people who found hope in her voice. And she reminded herself of the woman she was becoming: resilient, grounded, and powerful. Her story began inspiring others in ways she never anticipated. People who had gone through depression, heartbreak, financial ruin, or betrayal saw themselves in her journey. Her honesty gave them courage. Her survival gave them strength. Her growth gave them hope. And that connection became one of the biggest reasons she kept moving forward. She realized that her life was bigger than the industry, bigger than fame, bigger than awards. She had a purpose: to show people that brokenness isn't the end of the story, that darkness isn't permanent, and that no matter how far someone falls, there is always a way to rise again. And just when it seemed like Fantasia had reclaimed her identity, fate opened a door that would take her to a new level, a door that would bring her into the type of role that could define an entire generation, a role that wasn't just about performing, but about revealing the deepest layers of what she had lived, survived, and overcome. The world had heard Fantasia sing, but soon they were going to witness something even bigger: the full power of her story, her strength, and her transformation. Her highest chapter was still waiting. Fantasia Barrino's story isn't just about music or fame, it's about survival, growth, and reinvention. By the time she stepped back into the public eye, she had already transformed in ways the world couldn't fully see. Every performance, every interview, every song now carried the weight of her journey: the highs, the lows, the heartbreak, and the triumph. She had taken her pain and turned it into power. She had taken her struggles and turned them into lessons. And most importantly, she had taken control of her life in a way that no one could ever take it from her again. As Fantasia returned to music, she wasn't chasing charts or awards anymore. She was chasing authenticity. She wanted songs that spoke her truth, not songs that fit a label's template. She wanted to connect with people who had lived through hardship, people who understood resilience. And the result was breathtaking. Her voice now carried a depth that only comes from experience. Every note was raw, every phrase filled with emotion, every performance an intimate story told with honesty. Fans old and new could feel that she was not performing for them. She was sharing herself with them. Her acting career also began to flourish. Roles came her way that mirrored her own journey. Characters who had faced betrayal, loss, and personal battles, yet found their way to redemption. Fantasia didn't just act these roles, she lived them. The industry had once tried to pigeonhole her, to define her only as a singer, only as a young girl who had fallen apart. Now she was proving that she was multidimensional, that her talent went beyond one medium, and that her voice, both literally and figuratively, could move people in multiple ways, even as her career thrived. Fantasia's personal growth became the most profound transformation of all. She invested in her mental health like never before. Therapy, mindfulness, and self-reflection became part of her daily life. She rebuilt relationships based on trust, honesty, and mutual respect. She prioritized her family, especially her daughter, making sure she grew up surrounded by love, stability, and the example of a mother who refused to give up. No matter how dark things became, her comeback wasn't without challenges. The media was still quick to sensationalize her past, and critics remained skeptical. But Fantasia learned to rise above it all. She no longer needed validation from headlines or gossip columns. She didn't need to prove herself to anyone. She only needed to prove to herself that she could survive, grow, and thrive. And with every performance, every interview, every song, she did just that. Fantasia's story began inspiring millions. People who had faced mental health struggles saw themselves in her journey. People who had experienced betrayal or financial hardship drew courage from her resilience. People who had once felt powerless discovered strength in her example. Her story became more than just a biography of a star. It became a lesson in perseverance, self-worth, and the power of never giving up. She showed the world that setbacks don't define a person. They shape them into something stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Her transformation also extended to her influence on younger artists. Fantasia became a mentor, a role model, and a living testament to the importance of authenticity in the entertainment industry. She taught upcoming performers that fame is fleeting, but self-respect, integrity, and mental health are lifelong treasures. She reminded them that it's okay to be vulnerable, to struggle, and to rebuild, because true success is measured not just by awards, but by resilience and the courage to keep moving forward today. Fantasia Barrino stands as a symbol of triumph over adversity. She is celebrated not only for her extraordinary talent, but also for the courage she has shown in confronting life's toughest challenges. She continues to perform, to inspire, and to speak openly about mental health, resilience, and the importance of self-care. Her story is a beacon for anyone who has ever felt overwhelmed, defeated, or lost. She reminds us that it's never too late to reclaim your life, to rewrite your story, and to find your own voice. Her journey is far from ordinary. From winning American Idol at 19, facing financial struggles, emotional breakdowns, and even a near-death experience, to rising stronger, wiser, and more powerful. Fantasia has proven that life's obstacles don't have to define us. They can refine us. They can teach us lessons that no success, no award, and no fame can ever teach. And through it all, she has maintained a message of hope, strength, and determination. Fantasia Barrino's story also highlights the realities of the entertainment industry. Its glamour, yes, but also its harshness. She has shown the importance of understanding contracts, setting boundaries, and prioritizing mental health over public perception. She has demonstrated that, while the world may celebrate talent, it is the courage, resilience, and integrity behind that talent that truly matters. And in doing so, she has created a legacy that goes beyond music and performance. It is a legacy of survival, empowerment, and inspiration. As we look at Fantasia today, we see a woman who has conquered darkness, embraced her purpose, and reclaimed her life on her own terms. She continues to perform, to create, and to share her story with the world. But more importantly, she continues to live with authenticity, courage, and grace. Fantasia Barrino has transformed from a teenage star into a powerful example of resilience, showing that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges, it is possible to rise, shine, and thrive. Her journey is a reminder for all of us. Life will throw obstacles in our way. Fame will test our limits, and pain will challenge our will. But with determination, self-awareness, and support, it is possible not just to survive, but to grow stronger, to inspire, and to live fully. Fantasia Barrino is proof that the human spirit, when nurtured with courage and perseverance, can overcome even the darkest moments and emerge brighter than ever. So, the next time someone tells you that the journey is too hard, or that the world has crushed you too many times, remember Fantasia Barrino. Remember the teenager who sang with all her heart on a small stage, the young woman who faced unimaginable struggles, and the resilient artist who came back stronger, wiser, and more powerful than ever. Her story is still being written, and it serves as a testament to the power of never giving up, the beauty of self-discovery, and the triumph of the human spirit. Fantasia Barrino's journey teaches us that even when life knocks you down, the rise after the fall can be the most beautiful, inspiring, and transformative part of the story. And as she continues to sing, act, and share her truth with the world. One thing is certain, her voice will never just entertain. It will inspire, empower, and remind us all of the strength that lies within.